This video is sponsored by Established Titles. Mad God is the latest film which once again proves that the world of stop motion is still a very frightening place indeed. Released on Shudder on the 16th of June 2022, Mad God isn't just a fascinating film in on itself, but the story of how it came to be is also an interesting one, as this is a film that has been in the making for 30 years. Man, and I thought my upload schedule was terrible. The film is written, produced and directed by Phil Tippett, who, for those of you who don't know Tippett by name, you've more than likely been exposed to his work, as his works have been featured in numerous films and TV shows, including Star Wars, Robocop, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and Starship Troopers. What I particularly remember from him most, however, are his stop-motion dinosaur shorts which he released in 1985, where Tippett would make a conscious effort to try and portray these creatures as more like living animals rather than destructive monsters. My personal favourite being a 10-minute short which involves a herbivore getting hunted in the forest by a T-Rex. The way the camera angles are shot, along with the lighting and chilling music, really makes it feel like you're watching a horror film, and I definitely recommend you checking it out. Tippett, whilst working on Robocop 2 in 1990, decided to begin work on his own stop-motion film project, which he would develop into Mad God. However, after his involvement in Jurassic Park in 1993, Tippett saw how the use of CGI was changing in the film industry, and predicted that stop-motion would soon become a dead art form, and so decided to shelve the Mad God project. Which, fun fact, Jurassic Park was originally set to be done using traditional stop-motion, but then a preview was shown to the director Steven Spielberg showcasing a CGI T-Rex skeleton, and Spielberg was so impressed that he decided, yeah, this is the way forward. There's actually a funny little exchange between Tippett and Spielberg during this moment. When Spielberg saw the CGI preview of the T-Rex, he allegedly said to Tippett, "You're out of the job," to which Tippett replied, "Don't you mean extinct?" A line which Spielberg loved so much that he later incorporated it into the film itself.
We're out of a job. Don't you mean extinct?
And to be fair, even though I'm a massive fan of stop motion, I do believe the move to CGI was the correct business decision for Jurassic Park. Still though, seeing some of the test clips of Tippett's Jurassic Park, you can't help but wonder what could have been. It wasn't all bad news for Tippett, however, as he stayed on Jurassic Park as a consultant because he knew a lot about large animal movement. And yes, Tippett is the guy in the Jurassic Park credits that you see occasionally mocked as the dinosaur supervisor. Tippett's stop-motion animators were also retrained into CGI, and he still went on to win an Academy Award. So yeah, I suppose you could say,
Life, finds a way.
But first, a quick shout out from this video's sponsor, Established Titles. Established Titles is a fun project based on the historic customs of Scotland, where landowners are referred to as lords, ladies, or lairds. They allow you to buy as little as 1 square foot of dedicated land, which you can locate using your unique plot number. So you too can now be referred to as a lord, lady, or laird. Even being able to officially put it on credit cards, plane tickets, and even dating profiles. And if anyone should dare question your lordship, you can show off your official certificate, complete with a crest, something which I myself now proudly own. The project also has a really awesome cause where they will plant a tree for every order purchased, to help protect the pristine woodlands of the world, and aid in global afforestation efforts, working in partnership with charities such as One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future. Not to mention, you can also purchase this as a gift for someone else, or even get a couple pack where you can purchase adjoining pieces of land. Speaking of which, Established Titles told me that the first 200 people purchasing a title pack using my link will effectively be put next to my plot, within a few minutes of walking. So depending on how many of you want to become lords, lady or lairds, we can build our little Steve Reviews kingdom. Established Titles is now running a great Labor Day sale, plus if you use the code STEVE, you get an additional 10% off. Go to establishedtitles.com/Steve to get your gifts now and help support the channel. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Now back to the review. He also converted his visual arts studio into doing more CGI work, bringing us the visual effects from beloved films such as Starship Troopers, Evolution, and the Twilight films. So it seemed Tippett's days with stop motion were well and truly buried, and his Mad God project would likely never see the light of day. However, 20 years later, with the encouragement of various members in his studio, Tippett decided to uncover his seemingly forgotten project and began working on it once again, utilizing a team of volunteers to help out, many of whom were just filmmaking students, with Tippett jokingly commenting on this. So on the weekends, I would get as many as 15 and 20 people coming round. They didn't all have the talent or skill, but I'd figure out the processing during the week. I had them do all the heavy lifting. Then with further help from Kickstarter donations, Tippett was able to complete the first 3 sections of the project, which made up about half the film. Having the film funded by Kickstarter also allowed Tippett much more creative freedom, being able to show stuff that normally wouldn't be approved by Hollywood executives. And boy, he wasn't kidding. What's also really interesting is that Tippett admits that some of the clips we see in the film were actually from his initial production work when the project began. So we are seeing pieces of film that were completed around 30 years ago, which is insane.
And you're keeping that footage you shot 20 years ago, 10 years ago. It's all, you're not reshooting any of that.
No.
So when you watch that finished product, you're going to see 20 years in the making.
But after all the production history and effort, how does the final product hold up? And was it worth the 30 years it took to complete? Right from the start, we get this striking opening as we get a tower amongst the blood-red sunset as it slowly gets consumed by some dark storm clouds, coupled with a really grand orchestra. Feels like the opening to an opera more than a film. From researching online, this is apparently a scene from the Bible, when God smited those who were building the Babylon Tower. The visuals from this film are absolutely stunning, both in design and animation quality. If you're a fan of stop motion, you will love this film simply on the presentation. Basically what Lola Bunny from Space Jam did for furries, this film will do for stop motion enthusiasts. First up, the designs. Every single creature design is so creative and unique, ranging from visually intriguing to just straight up nightmare fuel. Some of which I'm not even sure I can show in this vid, as it could easily get it demonetized. And I don't mean that in the sense that they're too gross to look at, but more so that some of the creatures have very pronounced sexual parts. I'm talking giant tits, shitting arseholes, hanging balls and swinging dicks. It's all there. You know how in Rick and Morty some of the creature designs are meant to look like genitalia, but they're actually not, so the show kinda gets away with it? Well, here they look like it, and they actually are. But away from all that, the creatures also have fantastic movement. One of my particular favourites is this Plague Doctor creature, with the way it just eerily floats along the ground. Which, yeah, as expected from someone like Tippett, the animation for this film is awesome. Characters have smooth movement, and there are some scenes where so much is going on that on my second watch, I was noticing so many things that I'd missed before. The film also has that classic stop motion trait that I really love, in which a character is moving on screen and you see a lot of movement in the model itself, from where it's being manipulated between frames, such as the excessive rustling of clothes or various hair movements. It just highlights the amount of human effort going on in such a short space of screen time. Which, by the way, there's a scene in the movie that has a mountain of dead soldiers, which according to Tippett, this was done by melting thousands of little army men together on wire, and apparently took 6 people 3 years to complete it. That's just crazy. And the film isn't actually all stop motion. There are moments where some live action shots are used with actual people, and even some moments where the live action people almost seem to be moving in stop motion themselves. As well as the different characters, we get a number of different locations and settings which each have their unique experience and styles, from an industrial steampunk-like city, to a green toxic wasteland, to a horror-like forest, to a full-on war zone. Each location has a great sense of scale and offers strikingly different visuals, all of which possess such fine attention to detail. Even from the lighting, with how you get a prominent yellow for the first city, to a blue one in the later city. Now there was obviously some use of green screen and digital enhancement to help scale up these worlds, but honestly I think most of it comes from the camera angles, in which the character we follow can absolutely be dwarfed by what's going on in the background. And we get some awesome looking shots with the camera movement and the clever use of lighting to help the world feel much bigger than it is. Coupled with all these great visuals, we have great sound design provided by Richard Beggs, which for a film which contains no dialogue, there needs to be a greater emphasis on the sound, in which thankfully Beggs manages to pull off. Even with long scenes where very little is happening on screen, the noises you hear going on manage to keep you captivated. As for the music, aside from the opening score that I mentioned earlier, it doesn't really stand out and serves more as a background noise. I'm not saying that the score itself is bad or anything, but it seems to more just be serving the overall atmosphere rather than correlating with every piece of action that happens on screen. Now I know I've just been gushing over how amazing this film is in terms of looks and sound, but where it absolutely shines from a technological standpoint, it struggles from a narrative standpoint. Even Tippett himself admits that the film itself doesn't have a traditional narrative, and rather than following a character's journey with story arcs, character development, we're more looking at the world around them, with our characters simply being the looking glass for the audience. But even then, the story feels like it's fractured into multiple parts, which have been very loosely woven together to make it into a single film. For example, and I'll do my best to avoid spoilers here, in the first third of the film we follow this soldier who is only known to us as the Assassin, where he's tasked with planting a bomb in enemy back lines. We follow this character as he journeys through numerous locations until he's eventually captured. Whilst in captivity, a surgeon seems to look into his mind and has his memories projected onto a screen, in which we're now taken into another world. Now upon first watching this, I assumed this was going to give us some background context as to what the Assassin's mission was, and we were going to get an insight onto his earlier life. But it doesn't. Instead, we follow a now completely different assassin on his journey, after which we eventually cut back to the surgeon, but don't really learn anything as to why we witnessed what we did. And then the film proceeds to fly off into another completely different direction with a whole new set of characters. Now the reason for this is that during production there was no real storyboard or narrative for the film to follow, and much of it was Tippett deciding at the last minute what each scene will look and feel like.
So a great deal of Mad God works within a very limited structure, but a lot of it's not ruled by intention. It's like I'm letting the work tell me what it wants to be, and then I'm more like a facilitator, you know.
Which I think could be a bit off-putting for a lot of people, especially if, like me, you went into this with no prior knowledge, and it just kind of sitting there thinking, wait, what the fuck is happening? There's not to say that there's no narrative whatsoever. For example, in the first industrial city, we see the cruel treatment of the lower class workers, who I believe are meant to be represented as literal shit people. We see it how expendable they are throughout their numerous deaths, with some even seemingly committing suicide, all whilst being commanded by a mysterious upper power who speaks like a baby, and that any worker who steps out of line will be quickly punished for it. There's obviously an underlying message here which can be linked to other themes we see later on. Perhaps it's similar to The House, which is another stop motion film I reviewed earlier on, whereby we get 3 separate stories that are all linked through a theme rather than an actual plot. And of course, if you guys have any theories on what you believe the link could be in these stories, please do let me know in the comments below. There's also another nitpick I have in that I felt some scenes should have been cut a tad sooner, such as the Plague Doctor creature, which is carrying another young creature. The crying used for this young creature is a human baby's cry, and it goes on crying for way too long. Other shots I felt could have been trimmed down just a little bit are the opening segment with the pod descending into the world, the close-up of the assassin's boots which are walking through the world, and the Plague Doctor creature walking through the moving blocks. Other than that though, I really enjoyed this watch. There was a heads up which won't apply to many of you, because there's no real dialogue in this film, which I wasn't aware of before watching. Do not try watching this film with subtitles on. Normally when I watch a film for the first time, I like to turn subtitles on so I don't miss out on any quotes or misinterpret any line of dialogue that could be crucial to the plot. But having subtitles on for this film was just pure distraction, as all they really did was point out what was obviously happening on screen. So I know this won't apply to most of you, but if you're like me and normally use subtitles, don't for this one. Overall, I feel this film is more about presenting itself as a visual piece of art rather than a written book. It offers a superb visual experience, presents us with mysterious worlds full of some of the most unique creature designs you'll ever see, with high quality stop motion and immersive sound designs, along with plenty of moments which will definitely make you wince and squirm.